Okay. I'd like to call this committee the whole meeting to order. Additions or corrections to the agenda, Mr. Shelton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the public and the staff members that are in attendance. There was an addendum that went out on Thursday, and it includes a PowerPoint presentation from the Director of Public Works Services regarding the Northern Six Waste Collection Contract. It is item number 4. In addition, item number 5, Appendix A, begins on page 135. It's the policy itself. There's also an Appendix A attached to the policy, but the report refers to Appendix A being the entire policy. Item 5A, there's a PowerPoint presentation by the Business Performance Coordinator regarding the asset management policy and strategy. And then item 9, Appendix C to Corporate Services Report, Legislative Services, 2016-04, regarding the Ward 2 Egg-Laying Hens pilot project. The appendix was electronically distributed this morning. And item 10A is Community Services, Recreation and Culture, Corporate Services Finance Joint Report, 2016-08, regarding potential Hollingsworth Arena replacement and the next steps. And in addition, the closed session agenda also goes out on the Thursday. Any question as to why these items are before you in the form of an addendum or correction?
Councillor Broom-Plumley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. Item 16 in outstanding matters, number 4. I'd just like to request that that still be referred to staff. It seems to be removed from the outstanding matters list.
Yes. Thank you, if I could, Mr. Mayor, on that one. That was identified, and I've raised that with the Commissioner, and there needs to be a correction on that as well, so thank you for identifying that.
Thank you. I'm
that would
fine.
Remain on the list.
I'm fine with everything else.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? Okay. Can I have a motion, please, to add the addendum items to our agenda? Councillor Twinney, seconded by Councillor Vague. All those in favor? That is carried. Now, before we get started, there we are. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody about the town's rules of decorum for the meeting. The rules are standards which we hold each other to, and the rules ensure that each of us are treated with respect and dignity, and that each of us is given an equal opportunity to address council, and that the taxpayers' time and money is not wasted by unnecessary distractions. As chair, it is my responsibility to ensure that the rules of decorum are observed. Heckling, talking over each other, shouting, and persisting to speak if called out of order will not be tolerated. Regardless of political perspective, each of us shares a common goal of making Newmarket even better. Let's approach that passion for the town by being respectful to each other and of our rules. Thank you. Now that we've determined the addendum to the agenda, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Regional Councillor?
Thanks very much. I have a pecuniary interest or a conflict of interest related to item number 8 on the agenda today, just property on Eagle Street. I own a property within the notification area and quite close to this proposal, and I have declared a conflict in relation to this piece of property going back consistently, I don't know how long, but well into last term, and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other declarations? Being none. Presentation and recognition. First item then is a presentation by the Director of Public Works regarding the Northern Six Waste Collection Contract, and that relates to item number 4. Mr. Kalamutu? Mr. Shelton or Mr. Millhammer, did you want to provide an introduction, or should we go direct to the presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This report is a follow-up to earlier reports regarding the N6 waste collection RFP that is due to be tendered later this year. And before you today, you have the Director of our Public Works Services, Mr. Chris Kalamutu, who on behalf of the N6 has been instrumental in preparing the template of the RFP together with staff within our own procurement section. And Mr. Kalamutu will describe the format of the RFP and provide an opportunity for members of council to have input before the RFP goes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kalamutu?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today I'm going to be presenting, as the Commissioner mentioned, to the Committee of the Whole on the Northern Six Waste contract. This is the third update with regard to the request for proposal that will be going out. So to provide some background about the current contract, it started in 2007 and it is expected to go to September of 2017. So because of that, we have approximately 8.5 years of experience through this contract, and we have learned a lot. This was one of the first N6 contracts that we've developed. It's actually an award-winning contract between all the Northern Six municipalities of York Region. And within that experience, we actually developed a memorandum of understanding, which I'll get to in a little bit. The contract also, even though it's a conglomerative for the N6, gives us individual flexibility when it comes to certain things such as bag limits, collection of our BIAs, etc. In 2007, we also started our source separated organics section, and that is basically our green bin. And so that has been highly successful in Northern York Region. We also have a lot of experience with our customer service, the good and the bad, and the growth throughout the N6 that this contract is now servicing. So we have good experiences, efficiencies have been realized, but we can always improve. Right now for Newmarket, our annual budget for solid waste is $2.53 million. With the contract of 2007 to 2017, it is estimated that our savings versus the old pre-2007 contract will save us about $2.26 million over the 10 years, and that is for Newmarket. That is also absorbing the new service of source-separated organics and also absorbing the growth. Our customer service, we have approximately 25,500 collection points, which increases to about $2.4 million touches per year at a resident. So that includes the yard waste, the recycling, and the garbage, equaling 2.4, sorry. Through this year, for Newmarket, we've had 250 complaints come through our customer service that our customer service had to deal with.
520? 520?
Sorry, yes, 520 for 2015. So with the 2.4 million touches, that's 99.98% with no issues that the town had to deal with. However, we have had some bumps in the road. Our winter collection of December 2013 to February 2014, we did have some issues with respect to some weather and some collections. Through that, GFL has developed an action plan which they have now fully implemented. Another thing that we've done through our experience is hired a curbside collection inspector. We currently have one here in Newmarket that is split with King and Richard Stouffville. And we also, as I discussed in the previous report to council, a little bit of bylaw harmonization to make it easier for residents to understand and for the collector to understand. The other thing that we are going to be doing moving forward is have customer service as a higher percentage of the mark for the contract. So these are a few things that we've learned over our 8.5 years worth of experience. As I mentioned before, this is a conglomerate with the rest of the Northern 6 municipalities, and this just gives a list of previous reports for the past year or so that we've been going to council with respect to this new RFP. As you can see, we've gone back to multiple councils multiple times throughout the year, giving them an update, and this is further to that. As I mentioned previously, with the conglomerate of the N6, there is a memorandum of understanding. And through the report later on today, it is addended to that report. It provides some understanding of exactly what we do as municipalities for this contract. It identifies the municipal representatives and who they are for each municipality. It identifies a municipal relationships manager, and currently I hold that chair for the N6, basically being a liaison to the contractor. It sets up when meetings are held and how they're held. It notes when the directors report back to the CAOs. It talks about escalation procedures if there are disagreements within the N6 and how that may arise and how it may be combated. It talks about the termination of the contract and what happens. And it also talks about the cost-sharing formula throughout the N6. Customer service is something that we've heard previously. And previously I presented 3 options for customer service. The first one being the contractor's call center for customer service. And the second one is a third-party call center, whether that be outsourced to a third-party contract or consultant, or for one of the N6 municipalities to have the call center. Right now, what we are recommending is to go ahead with that first option of the contractor customer service call center. There are a few reasons behind this. Firstly, it's efficiency. A lot of times, one of the third parties would act as a middleman and be front-facing to the residents, but then have to call the contractor for investigation works, for feedback, etc. So that we're estimating that be about 25% of the calls. So instead of going back and forth between a middleman, whoever that may be, whether it be a municipality or a third party, another third party, it creates efficiencies if just the contractor were to do that. The logistics of managing multiple contracts is another thing that would create an inefficiency if that were to move forward. And with more touch points and more communication, there is potential for more miscommunication between either ourselves and the contractor, or third party and ourselves, third party and a contractor, etc. There may be a question of, can we have customer service as provisional in the RFP? Well, this again raises a concern that this part of the RFP may be priced very high, and the contractor may price themselves out of that certain condition because it may not be their expertise. However, what we've done is we've gone to Newmarket's award-winning customer service and created service level criteria within the RFP that the contractor must follow. And I'll get to those in a minute. Another reason for us to recommend the first option is a conflict of interest too. If we were to apply for a competing RFP for customer service, we may not be able to evaluate the RFP that may be coming in. So it would take us out of the evaluation. However, as always, if a resident does have an issue with the contractor, they can always call the town. So you can actually think of this as a hybrid issue. If they need to call the town, obviously they can. If there's any issues or any issues are brought up with the contractor, we would definitely deal with those. But on more day-to-day, it would be expected that the residents call the town or call the contractor for any questions. Other N6 partners are developing customer service centers and call centers of their own. And we can always have an outbound satisfaction survey to check on the performance of the contractor. We currently have about a 73% approval for our current contractor, and that was based out of the survey that we've recently done. Another reason for the contractor to take customer service is their hours of operation. We expect them to be operating between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6:30 or until all the collection is complete. So they don't necessarily have the restrictions for their hours of operation. However, as I mentioned, there must be service level criteria for the contractor to abide by. For those of us old enough, that is a meter stick, and is a penalty that some of us have had. So penalties moving forward, especially in the customer service area, are listed here in front of you. It includes failure to answer 75% of the customer calls within 20 seconds. It includes failure to conclude 75% of customer calls on the first contact. And again, that's where that 25% of possible back and forth may occur. If it was the contractor that's doing it themselves, it is an internal conversation that they need to do to investigate and get back to the resident. Failure to maintain a customer call abandonment rate of less than 10% per day. Again, that is a best practice that is based on our award-winning customer service center. So there are multiple penalties that they must abide by. These are the checks and balances, or the QA/QC that we must have within our customer service for the new contract. Other highlights of the RFP with regard to including customer service enhancements is the frequency of the collection is as is. The escalation clause for cost will be based on CPI, and that again is an as is. The bag limit, which was discussed in this chambers, we will have an option of a 2-bag limit to be priced, but currently we would remain as is. There's GPS tracking on all the trucks. A new service that we're providing, that we're expected to be providing with this RFP is bin delivery. There would be an option for the resident to call in to the contractor if there's a broken or misplaced bin and have it delivered to their residence. However, in saying that, there still it will be the option of picking up any of the bins at the town hall here, at the operations center, and all of the other facilities where they're currently available. So it's an increased level of service for that. In the RFP, we're looking at optional electronic waste collections up to 4 times a year. That is a provisional item. And we're going to be talking about fleet in the RFP. We're going to have newer trucks, and they should not be more than 10 years old. And after the 5th year, they get a repaint. So it keeps them fresh looking. Right now, what we're contemplating is a length of contract for 8 years with a possible 2 one-year extensions. So those are highlights of the RFP. And obviously today, I'm also here to get input from council on anything else they'd like to see in the RFP. So next steps. So January and February, updates to all of the N6 councils. Last week, we had an update to the N6 CAOs at their meeting and got input from them. In February, there's going to be another N6 directors meeting to provide the input from the CAOs and each of the individual councils, so that in March, we may be able to finalize and release the RFP. We're hoping to close that in May or June and do the evaluation on that. Between June and September, we'll come back to the council's reports on the RFP and to award the contract. We're hoping to award the contract and give the contractor approximately 1 year to purchase their equipment and trucks, and that would be September 2016. So that would give us a year for promotion and education on anything that has been changed or updated, that we can reach out to the public with P&E. And then the contract to start in September of 2017.
Thank you. I see Councillor Hempel has questions. Councillor Hempel?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Chris. Very good and informative. My question is in regards to, as a councillor, and representative of my ward, this is an essential service that we provide along with snow plowing. And these are really things that people really see, and they expect to have a high level of service. A lot of the complaints I receive and I hear about it, and you've helped me in many instances where we've had, a dispute between, say, the provider, the contractor, and maybe a resident. Maybe the resident felt that they put out their garbage in a timely manner, and yet the contractor saying, the garbage or the recycling wasn't put out on time. And there's this dispute, and as I said, you've helped me many times, and your department's helped me many times, and I do appreciate that very much. However, when it doesn't come to a certain point and, they've dealt only with the contractor, there's a level of frustration. And now maybe they're calling customer service. And I'm wondering how we as a town could maybe do a better job. If, when it comes to the point when I'm hearing about it, I have the opportunity to maybe give you a call or send you an email or send somebody in your department an email. But when it kind of stops at that customer service and making that call, and then a few days later I'm hearing about it, perhaps, that the person's had to bring the garbage back into the garage, they've had to bring the recycling back in, they're really frustrated. It's warm weather, the garbage is smelling. I'm wondering how we as a town could maybe do a better job, or maybe liaison between the resident and the contractor and having them come back. I'm just wondering how we can improve the level of service that we're giving when it comes to that. And I think it's very rare, but it does happen occasionally.
Yes.
Mr. Kalamuti?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will have some checks and balances within the contract itself, whether that be GPS locations, whether it be the enhanced customer service to make sure that they do answer the residents' questions on a timely basis. And again, there's always the option for the resident to call the town, always. So if they don't get the service that they think that they should be provided, there will always be the option to call the town. And we do have within the contract some additional penalty clauses to ensure that the service there is provided.
So just thinking about that, for myself, I think it would be very helpful, and I don't know if this could be part of the RFP, when, as a ward councillor, when an issue isn't resolved and the garbage, and they haven't gone back and picked it up and they've said, basically, sorry, didn't put it out on time, the resident's saying, yes, I did, and it hasn't been resolved, how many incidents are taking place in my ward where they haven't gone back and picked it up and haven't resolved it, so that I would have a better understanding, or the town would have a better understanding. Hey, look, we received so many calls and the people had to bring the garbage back in. Just so we would have a better understanding of the level of service that we're actually providing to the resident.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we're looking for in the next contract, which we currently do not have, is a computer system or system to output what the service level criteria are and how they are actually going to meet that. So when there is an incident, it should be placed within the system. When it's concluded, it would be placed within that system, and then that output is then provided to us on a monthly basis, so we can do a quality assurance and a quality control check to ensure that they are providing the right level of service. So it is going to be a monthly check to see what has happened over that month, how they've rectified any of the issues, and if there are any outstanding. So we can do that whenever we want. We can log into that system that we're going to be asking them to have, but there will also be outputs on a monthly basis where we can double check. So our customer service can go into their customer service system and double check anything that they get a call about, that our system gets a call about.
That's great. Is that information that could be provided to myself as a councillor on
Yes,
a quarterly or semi-annually or
we
annual basis?
can set that up within the new contract. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I see there are reporting systems that are required in the report itself, and one of them is failure to answer, or failure to follow up and resolve complaints within 48 hours. So some of those things would be reported out. So to Councillor Hempton's question is, can we break that down by ward and have that reported out by ward as a go-forward basis internally once we see that information comes to us anyway?
Right. As a councillor, I get that direct communication from residents, and, occasionally we do get those calls, and I have one right now, actually, and so be it that, the person's talking about, or they know that we're going out to contract, they have their concerns, they've raised their concerns, it hasn't been resolved yet, Like I said, it's a bit of an anomaly. You know, we're generally able to kind of deal with it and get it looked after, but yeah, so I'm encouraged to hear that information and be able to receive that information, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Twinney.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I know this is a huge RFP for us and the other municipalities, and certainly we want to make sure we do it right. And just looking, obviously you feel very strongly about the options of which route to go for the call center, and you feel it's best to go with the contractor call center. And you seem to have certainly a set of criteria set in place that's going to be in the RFP that they're, have to follow to ensure that complaints are dealt with properly, et cetera. I guess this is sort of more like feedback, but I guess my only concern is I still worry that one is that residents do pay, they pay their taxes, they pay us, the town of Newmarket. I just don't see them calling the contractor to get something dealt with. They just seem to always come to us because they feel that, they're paying their town of Newmarket taxes, and it's the town that needs to take care of it, and they don't want to be feeling like they're having to do all the work. I don't know. So I guess that's my only concern of having a contractor call center, and part of it too is what level of care will the contractor call center have compared to ours? I'm hoping it will be there, but I feel that perhaps our own staff care about the town a little bit more than say a contractor might, and that's just sort of a feeling I don't know, just my gut feeling, but I could be totally wrong. The question with regards to the performance penalties. So these will be if there is performance penalties, are they monetary? So there's going to be a monetary, I guess, value attached to each of these penalties. Is that right? And like sort of what that we see last winter, but they're basically a little bit more set in stone with very distinct, I guess, criteria.
Mr. Kawamoto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely, yes, there will be penalties attached to each and every one of these. Yes. And up into cancellation of the contract.
Okay. And with regards to the other municipalities, part of the N6, are we at a point now that we're all the N6 municipalities are agreeing to go forward with this N6 RFP?
Mr. Kawamoto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we're very close. We only have two more, after this one, there's only two more councils to go to move ahead with this and get all the council's opinions and suggestions on that. And
right.
Then, so this Thursday, we're meeting, and then we'll have to meet one more time with the other directors to get the input from the other two councils, but we're almost there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Regional Councillor.
Thanks very much. The 520 complaints that are referred to the PowerPoint presentation says after town 2015. Does that mean they were our customer service complaints, or is that theirs, or is that combined?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 520 complaints that the town customer service staff have dealt with, without passing those on to
Okay. So,
GFL.
and how many did the contractor deal with?
Oh, I don't have those numbers at this time, but I can get those for you. Again, with the system that is currently in place is a lot less specific than what we will be asking for when they have to produce the numbers and the rectifications of any issues.
Okay, well, I think it's important to have that number, because for the escalation option, that means the original number is higher, and if we're presenting that as I think we should have both numbers. I mean, I don't think it's crucial, and as a percentage, I'm sure it won't change dramatically, but I suspect their numbers are higher than ours, if not significantly so. I think to have the full picture of the kind of number of complaints we're talking about, that would be helpful. Do you know how many people they have working on customer service, and are they dedicated staff to customer service?
I do know that they have dedicated staff. I'm not sure of the number that they currently have on specifically for customer service, though.
So it could be one person.
Sorry, I believe the number is less than 5, but I think it's around 2, 3, around there. There may be 4 by now, but it's around that number.
And again, that's the current provider, so we don't know
that's
what
correct.
the proposed providers will be.
No, I understand that. But so who's currently monitors their customer service delivery? Who?
They monitor it themselves.
We don't monitor it anyway, so
We do get provided feedback, so we have the type outs on a monthly basis or whenever we want to go into the system. We have that, however, their system is not very robust as it stands right now. That's one of the learning experiences that we have gathered over the last 8.5 years, and within the next RFP, it will be more specifically defined so that we can get the outputs that we require for the quality assurance.
okay, where are their customer service people located?
I believe they're in Aurora.
Aurora. Okay. I guess I was hopeful, and I probably started raising this a couple of years ago, not more than 2 years ago, but hopeful that we could find a way to manage customer service by the town of Newmarket. I'm a firm believer that we've got an award-winning customer service department, and as Councillor Twinney said, I think there's just frankly a higher level of passion and care for our residents and their concerns. There seems to be a lot of barriers to moving in that direction, but I am still trying to understand when you say the penalties. Do we know the amounts of the penalties that are proposed? Are they?
We're currently working on those now.
Will we see those before this is finalized, or will not?
It will be in the final draft of the RFP, and but we were going to come to council for report back to council after the award of the contract, or for the award.
After they're awarded it, so we don't know the levels of penalties at this time.
If there are any suggestions, however, I'd be happy to take those in.
I think I think at least as one member of council, I need help understanding that we're doing everything we can, and so I don't know what those levels are. So I don't know if they're the kind of level that would cause someone to stop and go, boy, I better really not let that occur. I guess my other question would be, I was thinking about this quite a bit, and I'm accepting that there's a lot of barriers to doing this ourselves. And that residents can come to and escalate and call customer service at any time. But to me, it seems like we're saying, well, if this isn't, this much is registered or this much is registered, and we can check and we can log into the system and see what's going on. And I'm not suggesting this any company would do this. I don't know who the winner will be, so I'm not talking about a specific company. But isn't that only as good as we know what they're entering? Like if they decide to only enter every second, person who called in and said that they were dissatisfied or didn't get their garbage picked up, how do we monitor that?
Mr. Calmento?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be getting the inputs from those printouts to see exactly what happened. We also, if there is a customer service call into the town, we obviously would have to talk to them to see what issues they've had. We also have surveys that may go out periodically to determine the level of satisfaction that the resident has with the customer service of that contractor.
So I couldn't help but thinking when I was reading this that most of the times I get on a service call anywhere, and for example with Rogers or somebody like that, or virtually anyone, frankly, you call today, the first thing I get said is that this call may be recorded. Are these calls recorded?
We currently do not have that within the RFP, but that we could examine that option moving forward.
I would feel a lot better, and I think I'm raising this. I'm sure I'm not alone here, but this has been an issue. I've had a number of people say, not only did they not get the problem solved the way they wanted, which is open to interpretation, right? I get that, but I've had several people, more than several people, say to me they felt they weren't treated very well, or maybe even rudely. I would feel a lot better knowing that we had a staff member that wasn't just auditing their computer data readout, but that was monitoring their calls. And I don't mean in a big way, but if we know that we have some ability through technology and the right in the contract to have a customer service person patch in at any time and listen for an hour, I think that would be an incredibly valuable tool. And maybe we only need to dedicate one staff hour a week to that, but the knowledge that that's occurring, and then you can also check those calls against the data and go, oh, were all those 6 calls I listened to, were they all entered? So I know it's difficult, and I say this respectfully, with this many municipalities and trying to incorporate changes into this, but I think that's something we should really seriously look at.
Mr. Sheldon, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say that on that we could do some research on that to see if that is possible, and there's no harm in putting that into the RFP that I can see. I did also want to mention that we do audit the contract. We were auditing it on an annual basis. We've gone to every other year, and I think I've mentioned this before, and that is through our internal audit process, so through Paul Duggan from the region, and we could include in that audit review a higher level of checks and balances in terms of the customer service component. So just as another
Yeah,
safeguard.
and thank you. I think that would be helpful. I just don't, I think, though, that the whole thing really has extra meaning and extra ability to validate when you have that ability to monitor the calls themselves. I think that means that all the other data is verifiable. Other questions I have is the sale transfer of the company. It says that transfer acquisition by another party, any approval by the town to transfer ownership shall be contingent upon prospective controlling party becoming decided to the contract, otherwise complying with all terms and conditions herein. Do we have the ability, does each municipality or the collective have the ability to opt out on a transfer? Is that what, I can't tell if that wording says that or not.
Mr. Kalamuto.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is my understanding. Maybe the manager of procurement, I see him nodding his head over there. That's how it is written into the draft RFP, is that we would have the ability to opt out of the contract if it was sold to another entity.
And that we wouldn't need a rationale or call. We could simply say we're uncomfortable with this, and this is, we're triggering our right to go back out to a new RFP.
Yes, and any other company, that entity that would purchase that corporation, if they were to continue, would have to maintain the same service level and abide by the current agreement.
And I would assume it's safe to say, right, if something like that occurred, that would come back to council as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is additional notification within this new RFP about the purchasing of the corporation, which we did not have before.
Okay. Two other questions I have is, one is that the electronic waste is, how does that, I'm sure it's done in other municipalities, so you can just quickly educate me, but how does that work, or do we have to put a disclaimer out to residents about security of data, et cetera? Because, I mean, as soon as you put something at the end of your driveway for more than 5 minutes, we can no longer guarantee security of data, et cetera, et cetera. So how does that work?
Yeah, that is true. I'm not 100% sure about the logistics of it all. What we're doing is we're putting it as a provisional item within the RFP. They would have to get the appropriate licenses and all the coverage if they were to go ahead with that. So what we're doing is we're not making it mandatory within the RFP. It's an option that we're pricing out.
And is our legal department already, or will be looking at, as that option comes in, looking at any issues of liability towards the town for data, et cetera?
The contractor would have to submit all relevant documentation that our legal would definitely be looking at.
Okay, my last area is the fleet. If I recall correctly, when we had some difficulties 2 years ago, roughly, whatever that one winter was, part of the issue, a big part of the issue, and was addressed afterwards, but was that they didn't really have any kind of spare truck or two or fleet. And so when a couple or a few vehicles didn't want to start on a morning, it just meant the service kind of deteriorated. So you do mention the fleet age, but what about, have we written some provisions about, backup equipment?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're actually asking for a fleet plan. So they have to have a maintenance plan submitted within the RFP. So they have to understand, so we have to understand exactly what their diesel mechanics do, exactly what the backup trucks will be, how many, so that plan shall be submitted within the RFP.
Okay, and in terms of the age of the fleet, no more than 10 years. That sounds like a fair amount to me, but to be fair, I don't deal in this area. Is that relatively a standard amount of time for other RFPs related to garbage contracts?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from my understanding through our consultant who does know these things, he says that the 10 years is fairly standard throughout.
Okay, and you're comfortable that 10, if their 50% of their fleet was 8 to 10 years old towards the end of the contract, we're still okay?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I do feel that 10 years is an acceptable level, especially if they are going to be repainted after the 5th year too. And we also have in the provision of the RFP, as we do in this current contract, for decals to be done every other year too.
You know, I understand that the 10 years gives flexibility, and then through that you get better pricing. You know, if you said everything had to be only 2 years old, you pay for it. I get that. But was there any thought given to a percentage of the fleet must be of a certain age, and like you can get up to 10 years, but at all times a certain percentage must be at least 7 or 50%, I mean, so that you don't end up with a really old, borderline of all 10-year. Because that was an issue for us, right? That's really was a big area where we came into crunch, was the maintenance, age of the fleet, and the backup trucks was.
Yes.
There may be a risk in over-managing that. If we set the performance expectations and if we set the redundancy requirements and then let them manage to the performance criteria that we set out.
Well, I'm just asking staff, I'm not trying to manage or say it should be that way. I'm just asking, is that something we considered, or mileage, or some other standard?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We did consider that, actually lessening the age of the vehicles. However, we did decide on 10 years would be the best management practice. We have looked at other contracts, and 10 years does seem to be the standard. I would not want to go above and beyond that. However, again, with the checks and balances of the plan that should be submitted with the RFP from the mechanics area of the contractor, I would feel comfortable in that, pending what that says.
Do other RFPs ever refer to mileage? Or no?
I'm not sure.
You've
I
not seen
don't have
that? Well, maybe it's an area you guys could just
however-
double check on and see if there's any other best practices in that area to ensure.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, the consultant that we do have on board would know that information. It has not been mentioned in any of the meetings that we had, but if he is comfortable with that, I'm sure he has looked into that specific issue.
Might be worth a question. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Councillor Sponga.
A couple of questions along the same lines, customer service and some of our past experiences. If you could go back a couple of, I think it was the second slide when you referred to the different options for customer service. There it is, thank you. It says that through your presentation it said that really going to a third-party call center or a municipal call center wasn't necessarily the best choice. Can you, and you talked about middleman logistics risks and so forth, but I can understand that if we're talking about any other customer service but the one in the town of Newmarket. At one point or other, and maybe I'll look to the CEO for a clarification or correction on this one, I believe that our customer service was contracted to the region or through the N6 for the rollout of the SSO program. In 2014, I just had a chance to quickly look at report 2015-2 speaks of 112,279 calls that were vetted by our customer service department. I'm wondering why, is there something to do with finance or resources within the N6 contract, RFP, or within our ability to at the town of Newmarket customer service to provide the service? Because I'm having a hard time getting my head around how less than 5 customer service representative at GFL, I assume, at the present contract, can vet 2.5 million touches. Whereas our own customer service that has an incredible experience has a lot more, it has a much deeper breadth of operation, resources, and so forth around customer service. How do we feel confident that, and you said it yourself, that, and I'm not sure if you referred to the contractors that may not be within their area of expertise to provide the service. So I still need to get a better understanding of why would we not try to look internally for customer service, rather rely on the contractor that they're in the business of picking up garbage. I don't think they're in the business of dealing with customers. And then the other concern that I have is that by the time that the call is escalated to Councillor Hempin or myself or whomever, there is already a heightened level of frustration. It means that it didn't work out with the first point of contact, and now something had to happen for them to get frustrated enough to call customer service or to contact the councillor or staff, senior staff directly. And not having the number in front of us of how many calls actually GFL received adds to my concern. So can you expand a little bit more on this? Because it seems like there needs to be a little bit more work needs to be done on this.
I think some clarification is needed with respect to the number, the 2.4 million touches. That's 2.4 million transactions with our residents over the course of a year, not necessarily a phone call or not necessarily a dialogue, but to pick up the garbage and to return the containers on that basis.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So the other thing then is how well, I think you're trying to understand, is how well do they manage interactions with customers or complaints? And I don't think that software is here, but it's being contained in the contract that those requirements would be there for us. So that's part of the learnings that we've had over the last 8.5 years. Maybe you'd like to expand on that, Mr. Kelly.
And also through you, Mr. Mayor, why is it difficult is it a financial factor? Is it a resource issue? Why isn't this something that a customer service center like the one in the town of Newmarket that has prior, in the past facilitated contracts with the region, with other neighboring municipality? Why is this something that we feel it's not the appropriate fit for?
Mr. Kalamutu?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As it states on the slide, approximately 25% of the calls would need investigation. So that would mean going back to the contractor anyways for them to understand exactly what the issue is, what happened, maybe send their staff out. So they then would have to get back to us, and then we would call the resident. If it was the contractor that was dealing with the resident, it would be an internal discussion that the contractor would have with themselves within the investigation and immediately get back to the resident. So there is a time lag making that additional connection actually on the way there when we get the call to the contractor, and then again from the contractor back to us. So that would take us out of that picture. So it would be an efficiency that the contractor would create because there's 2 less touch points and going back and forth for that.
But our past experience though has shown that the system may be more efficient in terms of us having to follow up on these calls. But are we confident that they have an efficient customer service?
We don't know who they is yet. So what we have to do is we have to determine what we require. So we need to set out the outcomes. We need to set out the performance expectations. Okay? So while I understand that it's important for us to gain context and learning from what we've experienced in this contract, I hope that's been able to inform what it is we want to set out and what our expectations are in the RFP. I think that's what we're learning throughout all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Broom-Plumley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Chris, for the presentation. It was interesting to look back 8 years ago to see how far we've actually come with the waste collection. Clearly, I guess what I'm hearing from my colleagues today is that there needs to be, I guess, more communication between ourselves, residents, and the contractor. I personally would have preferred to see a Northern Six municipality call center that resigned here with our own customer service, but if that's not going to be the case, then there needs to be more of a communication. So I guess what I would like to see at some point is exactly what that process would look like. So if our call center has the ability to look into what has been reported to the contractor, is that in real time? Are they able to log on immediately while they're on the phone with one of our residents to see if that report has been reported? And then they can then say, yes, we see that the contractor has reported that your garbage hasn't been picked up. So at least we have a dialogue so that we know in real time what's happening. Is that something that would be available? So I guess what I'm asking for is a real understanding of what the process would be. Because often a resident will automatically call the town, they'll call GFL, or they'll call both. They'll call GFL and let the town know what their experience was. And I guess if there's going to be checks and balances in place, what kind of real-time customer service can we provide in conjunction with the contractor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. Our staff, our customer service staff, among others, would definitely be able to log into the system, and as they're inputting, as the contractor is inputting the issue, they would be able to track that or look at that in real time. That's what we were asking for from that system that I just talked about. The other one is the GPS system on the actual trucks. We are looking at being able, well, we currently have a tracking system that any of the staff that have access to that system can log on and see exactly where all of the currently the GFL trucks are, and in a real-time basis also. And one of the, if I can, an example that we have from learning experiences, currently those GPS ping and note where they are approximately every 300 seconds. With the new contract, we're actually narrowing that down to 30 seconds. So we'll get a much more specific understanding of where each of those trucks are. And again, that comes from our 8.5 years of experience learning what we can do.
Thank you. And just off topic, at my ward meeting earlier this last month, a number of residents felt that we should look at the bins that we're actually using. Is there any thoughts of doing anything with regards to the blue bins and having some kind of a lid or a containment or anything like that? You know, maybe when we're looking at redoing them or coming up with a new shipment, it was something that seems to be very top of mind with the education piece. Doesn't seem to be working. The residents are still finding recycling kind of blowing all over the neighborhoods.
Mr. Kalamutu?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have multiple times looked at different bins and collection boxes that we have, and we also have to take into consideration the timing for the contractor, health and safety for the contractor, what size the bins are, how much we're recycling, all that kind of things take into consideration. And we've actually just a few years ago expanded to the 26 gallon bin, liter bin, sorry. So what we're actually doing throughout the N6 is looking at the same size bin, and that's part of our bylaw harmonization. But we have looked at a multitude of different size bins with lids, without lids, and we've come to the conclusion that the ones that we currently have actually are the best ones, with the grip, with the handles, how they're dumped physically, the logistics of all that. So those are things that we have examined in the past. We continue to examine them as new technology arises and different ways of doing things. But right now, the ones that we currently have are the best options.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bazans, then Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Sponga, and Councillor Twinney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thanks as well, Chris, to you. Just a couple of questions with respect to the enforcement of bylaws and consistency, which is mentioned, the importance of having the contractor, you know, they're on the front line, so they're actually going to be enforcing some of our bylaws. One of the challenges that I hear currently from some residents is that they don't understand why they'll put their garbage or their recycling or green bins out every week, and then all of a sudden it's left on the end of the driveway and they don't understand why. You know, what was different? I haven't changed anything. Same number of bags, same bins that I've used, same garbage can that I've used, and suddenly it's left behind. And then, you know, after I do some research, we find that it's because the contractor has suddenly decided to, or that particular crew has decided to enforce a bylaw that says you have to have a particular kind of handle on your garbage can, or, you know, your bags can only be half full, or whatever it is. So I think that presents some challenges to residents, because if you're doing something and it's picked up, they assume that they're doing the right thing, then all of a sudden it's as if the rules changed. So has there been any thought to including sort of consistency as a performance measurement in the enforcement of bylaws as part of the requirement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, what we'd like to do, and that's why we also have the P&E that we're going to be doing for the year from September of 2016, when we know, hopefully know who the contractor is, to September of 2017, to get all of those things in place so consistency starts from day one. And we also have that year to do the promotion and education for the residents to understand exactly what the expectations are, what the bylaws say, and all that thing. So it's more of an opportunity to do a media blitz so that everybody is singing from the same hymn book, so that we all understand what the expectations are. And that's what we've given the opportunity to do within that year.
Okay.
So you reference P&E, that means?
Promotion and education.
Thank you.
Yes.
And there's also reference to a liquidated damage amount in the report. I'm not clear on what a liquidated damages amount is, because it's used almost sort of in addition to incentives. Generally, incentives are positive incentives. I would think that a liquidated damage amount is a negative to the contractor, but it doesn't sort of reference how much that amount is. Is there some formula for that amount?
Mr. Kalman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those are the penalties. So the list of the penalties, this on the screen, there's a multitude of them. It's not the exhaustive list, but these are a good chunk of what the penalties are. So those are the liquidated damages. It's just a sort of different wording.
So it would be like a fine then?
More or less, yes.
Okay. And then just my final comment, I noted that the savings over this past contract have been higher than we even anticipated at $2.26 million just for the town of Newmarket. Is there some kind of benchmark or expectation that we might have over and above whatever we contract for to have some additional savings as we were able to benefit from this last time?
Mr. Kalman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll have to see what the RFP actually says. The numbers that I have were based on the previous contract and escalation in a similar way. So taking those numbers and extrapolating them out for this contract, we've saved that $2.24 million compared to the service and the cost provided pre-September 2007.
Oh, pre that, the current contract?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerwin, then Councillor Sponga, then Councillor Twinney.
Yes, I just have some questions, and some of them echo what many of my colleagues have said. I mean, this is a massive contract, and I imagine that out there are only very few all-encompassing waste management companies that can probably bid on this. And I compliment the staff that's worked on this. This is a really tight contract that's going out there, and people who bid on it will know the specifics, and I really like that. I like the experience that we have had. We've had about 8.5 years of experience with the past contractor, so we've tightened it up. So Green for Life purchased Turtle, and we've corrected that in this contract, and where the trucks are stored and the conditions and so forth, and even in human relations of staff who work for these companies. You seem to favor, and I go back to customer service, a contractor customer service call center. And why specifically would you favor that, Mr. Kalamutu?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, taking a look at the efficiencies, the logistics, and the risk that we have, weighing all of that, the N6 directors have moved ahead and suggested, recommended that first option of the contractor customer service.
Okay, very good. And the mayor has pointed out, really, we won't really know how we can handle this until we really know who the contractor is. And he might already have something that's really, really efficient. There would be then a cost savings to the N6 by having a contractor customer service center. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it obviously would depend on the award of the RFP and how much there is, but there is that potential in savings. And with regard to efficiencies, this new draft RFP makes them efficient. With the checks and balances that we have, with the customer service level criteria that we got from our own customer service center, we are basically making sure that there is the efficiency, even though it is a contractor customer service. We're making them efficient.
No, I really thank you for that, because when we come to do the 2017 budget, I mean, all of us are going to be under pressure once again to bring in a very reasonable budget, and what we don't need is overloading departments that we do have within the town. So any pressure that can be taken off us where we don't have to hire new staff is of benefit to the taxpayer of Newmarket. So thank you so much for your answers, Mr. Kalamuto, and a really thoughtful presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga, Councillor Twinney, and then Councillor Bay.
Thank you. Still have some concerns with the customer service model, but I guess that'll get flushed out through the RFP and the award of the contract. Now, the contract speaks to performance, speaks to fleet, a number of things, number of items. One of the issues, and I'm glad Regional Councillor Taylor raised this, that we encountered, I think it was 2013, 2014 in the winter, wasn't just the reliability of their fleet, but was also the one-man truck versus a two-man truck. I don't see, is there anything within the provisions of the RFP that specifically speaks to that? Because that seemed to slow down the collection quite a bit, and not only that, but it seemed to have created, at that point, quite a turnover within their own staff. Is that something that is being considered as part of drafting this RFP?
Mr. Kalamuto?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't specifically have that, as we don't actually tell the contractor how to run the business, depending on whether it's two people, one people, what the efficiencies they have, what kind of technology that they have incorporated into it. What we do is note the level of service that they must provide to us. How that's done, obviously they need to plan, they need to submit that to us, and we need to approve that. Again, that's why we actually have an RFP, a request for proposal, as opposed to a request for quote, so that we can understand more of the logistics behind exactly what we're doing, and we can mark them on their plans that they have together.
But we identified that as an area of concern in the past contract, so why wouldn't we not identify it as why would we not include a provision to avoid getting into that situation as we move forward with this RFP?
There's a risk, I think, sometimes in becoming too prescriptive in telling them how to run the business. I think what's really important for the municipality is to set out very clearly what the service levels are, what the outcomes are, and the responsiveness that we're looking forward to. And we need to allow the contractor to determine, and we have to do our own due diligence to satisfy ourselves that they're going to be able to deliver those expectations. But if we start telling them how many trucks or how the trucks are manned or anything like that, if that doesn't work out, there's the risk that they might say, well, we did meet those specifications. I really think that we need to kind of focus on the outcomes that we want to have for our customers and how we might monitor those outcomes. And let's have the proposal focus on that as opposed to trying to find the solutions or how that will be done. Let's just leave it up to the contractor in his proposal to tell us how it will be done, but we need to set out what we want done, and I think that's what we should focus on.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you, but it was the case in 2013, 2014 winter where we identified that was an issue. We identified that was an issue that impacted the performance of the contract, and we insisted at that time, whether it was Green for Life or GFL, I don't recall at this point, but we insisted at that point that increased their staffing level to meet the needs and the performance. In order for them to meet the performance that was set out by the contract, we knew that they had to move to a two-man truck, because otherwise they were out there collecting, if you recall, they were out there collecting garbage until 10 o'clock at night during the night under very, very rigid winter conditions. And that had become a big issue, point of discussion, the fact that they only had one person per truck. So I'm just wondering if we're setting ourselves up to find ourselves in that spot again.
I guess my thought would be on that is that if that was the problem, they solved the problem. And if we insist on them solving the problem and delivering within specified time periods, then that, in my view, is the best way to manage that relationship. Could be. Mr. Sheldon, maybe you could enlighten us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't recall the specific issue there, but it may have been that the equipment and the way it was staffed may not have been compatible. So one of the things that the directors will have to be sure of when they look at the proposal, because it is, as you've indicated, performance-based, they have to perform to make sure that there's compatibility between the equipment and the staffing of the trucks and the methodology of the pickup. So that may have been the issue back then, but I'd have to recheck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Twinney, then Councillor Vague.
Thank you, through Mayor. I just think, sitting here and listening to everybody, and just a follow-up to Councillor Plumley's comment about lids and everything. And I know, I mean, it's not logistical to have lids and then they have to take the lids off, and I think that was part of the issue. Was, but it has, come up in the past with many residents about the fact that, blue bin material gets blown around, and why can't we have lids? So, which made me think about the fact that this is a contract that was in place since 2007. Now we're going to be going into our next one, so this will be expiring in 2027, and that's a 20-year period, and technology has changed so much, and I know it probably will come down to cost and being very expensive, but so being in the States and seeing that they've got technology that seems so much more advanced than us with large bins with lids. The truck just comes along and picks it up and it goes in. For example, my parents, they have a bin for recycling, a bin for garbage, and it's all done with one truck and it's all automated. And I guess, this is our opportunity now. It's another 10-year period that this contract's going to be in place. And did we look at, is this the most advanced technology that we are using, this blue bin, open blue bin way of doing it, where it's handled by, a man that has to get off the truck, or two men, or whichever way they decide to do it, and having to hand load it? Or is this as advanced as the technology is here? Or I guess it's just sort of questions to throw out there, because we are at that point right now that we are going to be going into a 10-year contract, and are we going to be at the most advanced technology that we can be? Are we going to be totally antiquated by the time 2025 turns around and we're getting to the end of this contract? So it's more like a comment or question, or maybe some feedback from yourself about, I guess, garbage in general, and if it is doable, and have we looked at what the cost would be, and so.
Mr. Calabunta?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a lot that we have learned since 2007. We have looked at a multitude of things, and again, this is one of the other reasons why we're having a request for proposal as opposed to a request for quote, because the contractor could provide whatever options they feel that is most efficient in collecting the material, whether that be some other form of technology or another. They can then put that into their plan, and that's what we evaluate as the N6 group. So there absolutely is opportunity for the contractor to put that forward. The other thing, and that we have within the RFP, is as the time rolls on and technology changes, the contractor can then come to the N6 group and suggest a change within their process or their technology that we may be able to approve for implementation. So we're actually never left behind the way that the RFP is written, because there is always that opportunity, if technology changes, for that to be adopted afterwards.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate that. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any proposals that come forward that does look different in the makeup of how we do it now. But I guess, I can't see there being a major change in technology halfway through the proposal, because the expense of that would be so much. I would think that it would be tough for them to recover their costs. Like once they say buy new trucks in 2017 implementation, there wouldn't be I couldn't imagine if there was a big change in a type of truck for pickup would possibly be possible, because I would think that would be just too cost prohibitive. But it'll be interesting to see what, if there's anything that comes out from this RFP that looks different than the makeup of what we have now.
Thank you. Councillor Vague.
Thank you very much. First, thank you very much for the presentation and all the work that is going into this, and to my colleagues, most everything that needs to be said has already been said, so I'm not going to repeat too much of that. When we started this, in terms of partnership and such a large contract, in many respects, we were kind of the pioneers, and it's been learning to, when that happens, and you have to work things out as we go along. We did discover when we had the problems with the pickup 2 winters ago, these were systematic problems. They were problems. We mentioned the trucks, the age of the trucks designs, et cetera, and those are being able to be addressed. In terms of customer service, this is one of those services that that touches our residents on a fairly frequent basis, on a weekly basis, and it's great when it's invisible and they don't give it any thought. They put out their waste and they come back at the end of the day and the waste is gone. And I'm also heard for everyone here that the conversation that's happening around this table is also happening in 5 other municipalities, and they'll be talking about their experiences too. And all this is being fed into our RFP. I do have after saying all that, I do have a question. You mentioned that the customer service portion is being more heavily weighted in this RFP compared to the most previous RFP. And usually when you're having these requests for proposals and you're judging them, you give, this is worth 15%, this is worth 10%, this is worth 40%, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about what weighting we are giving to the customer service portion? And I may have a follow-up question to that.
Mr. Calvert?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that actually has not been determined yet. That's what we will be talking about on Thursday when we hear the feedback from the other directors through the other directors from the other councils. However, through the feedback from this councillor, we have decided to weigh that a little bit more than we usually do. That is one of the things that I'm bringing back to the table, to the N6 table, to the other directors. And again, it's our manager of procurement who is putting together the RFP. He's put a lot of work into this one, and his recommendation is also to increase the amount of weight with respect to customer service.
Okay, and the final comment I'm going to make on this, and it has been touched on, that when there are significant failures, which may happen on behalf of the service deliverer, I really like to see significant financial penalties. There's no way. It's usually the best way to get someone's attention is to hit them in the pocketbook, and if they know there are significant penalties, they seem to invest a lot more on the preventive side, and certainly on the remedial side also, if a customer contacts, to take care of that immediately. So it'd be interesting to see the type of financial penalties and that will be eventually put in place. And again, it should be something that they should be motivated, really motivated to avoid incurring those penalties, and that'll cause them to invest more in the customer service side to either avoid those issues or certainly come up with very quick remediation.
That's a good point. Actually, if I could just reflect back to Councillor Bazan's point, and that is monetary considerations when something goes wrong. But what about an incentive program when things go right, that there's a reward for that? And I know that it's very late into the discussions and the drafting of the RFP, but that would be an interesting thing if they scored an exceptionally high rate on good customer service. Depending on how we validate that, that's got some real value. And a big part of that will be the due diligence that we undertake when we receive the RFPs back. And then finally, I think there was a good suggestion in terms of seeing if there is some way that we can incorporate the notion of being able to monitor the calls. I think that was a good suggestion as well. So that any further questions, Mr. Sheldon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been a lot of concerns expressed about customer service, and what I was going to recommend is that we do provide a follow-up information report for members of council that will, amongst other things, address the issues, but also a point was made about what does that process look like for the resident calling in if they do have a complaint, what that escalation process looks like. So staff will undertake to do that. And include information that is still being talked about by the directors in terms of what the penalties look like and so on. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. And then before I call the report forward, there's been an awful lot of hard work went into this 8 years ago. There's been an awful lot of good learnings. What I think really is important is that we worked hard to make a partnership that's created some substantial benefits for our municipality. And so it may require some flexibility on our part to recognize some of the concerns of others, and it may require some flexibility on the behalf of others to kind of recognize what some of our concerns are. So I think it's really important that we have enough flexibility that we can accommodate everyone, because we've worked hard to produce a very productive partnership, and I'd hate to see us erode that just on the basis of inflexibility. So that's just an observation. There being no further questions then, could I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Vague, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Kalamutu. It's probably appropriate to bring report number 2017-27, item number 4, forward, and we do have the recommendations. Could I have a motion then, Regional Councillor?
I'd actually like to, and I'll look for a little staff direction here. If this is problematic because of the balancing between 6 municipalities, then maybe the wording could be changed slightly. But I would like to move the recommendations as they are, with the exception that item 3 states that in the service level criteria for customer service and other performance objectives, as noted in this report, be included in the request for proposal, as well as the inclusion for a customer service call recording and monitoring. Now, if that's wording is fine, then we'll leave it there. But if you think it needs to be a little more flexible, then we can put a wiggle word in or something so that we're working with the others. But just the inclusion of after request for proposals in number 3, as well as an inclusion for customer service call recording and monitoring by the N6.
Okay. Mr. Sheldon?
Mr. Mayor, I think that we could make that work, and with the understanding that if the other municipalities, for whatever reason, are not interested in that, we would still put that in for Newmarket.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
Just going to have a seconder for that motion as amended. Councillor Twinney. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now, what do we have here? We do have another presentation that's relative to the asset management strategy. Now, we've about quarter 2. Lisa, is this about 10 minutes or so? Let's receive that presentation and deal with the asset management strategy, and then we'll take a quick break and come back. Maybe deal with the consent items in the event that anyone's looking for consent items before we take a break. Okay. Lisa. Mm-hmm. Okay. Peter, would you like to give us an introduction and overview of what we're about to hear?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you is a presentation by Lisa Ellis, who's Business Performance Coordinator and the Chair of the town's Asset Management Committee, which is a staff group that is charged with bringing forward the asset management framework. The item before you today is a corporate asset management policy. And this will establish a consistent approach to the way the town deals with asset management. It has been developed based on best practices, and this policy will enhance the town's asset management practices regarding sustainability and fiscal stewardship. And with that, I'll ask Lisa to provide us with a presentation leading to the policies and the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, fellow staff, and members of the public. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to discuss this asset management policy and framework with you today. Before I begin, extensive research has been conducted into this policy, and I would really like to thank the City of Ottawa for their guidance in allowing us to take a look at their policy and kind of incorporate that into our policy moving forward. In December 2014, the town published its first asset management plan, and that plan provided key recommendations for improving asset management here within the town. In keeping with that plan and best practices, staff have prepared a policy to provide guiding principles to aid staff in managing the town's assets. This policy aligns with the town's strategic priorities of ensuring effective and efficient services. The policy reflects sound, accountable governance and is the foundation of the town's key strategic asset management documents that are outlined in Appendix A that were attached to the policy. Once the policy is approved, staff will work to complete a strategy, define customer service levels, and improve existing reporting of our asset management plans, and as well as expanding our municipal performance measurement program reporting. We would like to produce a more robust state of the asset or state of the infrastructure report for council and the public. The 8 guiding principles are referenced here, and to clarify the expectation of those principles, brief descriptions were provided within the policy. The policy will apply to all staff. However, SLT and OLT have been assigned specific responsibilities within the policy to create a culture of effective asset management within the town.
Lisa, for the benefit of our viewing audience, SLT and OLT means?
Strategic Leadership Team and Operational Leadership Team.
Thank you.
In an effort to implement best practice standards within the town, and as we continue to expand our asset management knowledge, staff will be referring to this document, our Asset Management Framework, attached as Appendix B to the policy, to guide our understanding of asset management and how it affects the organization at all levels. I'll walk you through this framework now. So the first section of the framework refers to the necessity for guiding documents that will guide staff in meeting residents' expectations. These documents include your council strategic priorities, the official plan, as well as master plans and other key policy documents. The next step in the policy, stage 2 of the framework, is to create a policy which is before council today. Then we will develop a long-term approach to a strategy, and staff will be issuing an RFP to retain the services of a consultant to work with staff to develop that strategy. This will guide the town as it continues to apply best practice in managing our assets. Once the strategy has been developed and approved, staff will report back to council with an implementation plan to execute that strategy, noted here as Part 3. Staff will work with the consultant to provide recommendations with regards to determining service levels, risk management decision criteria and techniques, as well as resourcing needs and technology requirements going forward. While the Asset Management Plan, Part 4, has already been prepared and documented, this does require annual updating. As part of the strategy, our Asset Management Plan will be updated to reflect the necessary changes and operational requirements that will be required. And they will once again be reported out via the town's website, as is our current practice. So, as we continue to expand our knowledge of asset management and follow this policy, the town will be better positioned to reap the benefits of this framework. Those being delivering services at approved service levels, improving decision-making accountability and transparency, better demonstrating the long-term consideration of short-term decisions, improving customer service, reducing life cycle costs while maintaining acceptable levels of service, and linking infrastructure investment decisions to service outcomes. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you. Are there any questions, clarification, any comments? Okay, thank you, Lisa. That was very comprehensive. We'll bring you the report forward as well. Could I have a motion to receive the presentation?
So moved.
Councillor Hempin, Councillor Bizans. All those in favor?
Oh, I just have a question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that on the presentation.
That's on the presentation. Yep. Okay. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried. Now, we have report number 2016-01, which is the Asset Management Policy and Strategy. We have the recommendation moved by Regional Councillor, seconded by? The recommendations by Councillor Kerwin. Okay, thank you. Regional Councillor speaking to the motion.
Thanks very much. This is a good presentation and good work, and I think it's, this is an incredibly important area to spend time on and make sure that we have a very clear plan of where we're going and how we're getting there. The one part that I have to jumped out at me a little bit was the paragraph on human resource considerations. It seems to be saying that we're going to ask the consultant about resource requirements related to staffing resources required to continue this project. I assume that means that staff are of the mind that there probably are some. And I guess if we're moving forward this portion, are we able to at this point speak to that at all, or I'm not, or I guess we're approving something to move it forward, but then it says to continue the process. Well, we could get a consultant's report back that says you need to hire 3 people or something. I guess we probably should be a little
Mr. Noham?
eyes wide open on this.
Yep. Mr. Albert?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that observation, that question. It's a good one. The intention at this point is to get the policy adopted and obviously help us move forward with the guiding principles. But the next step would be to move forward on the strategy. And for that, we are looking to retain the service of a consultant to help us with that. We've identified a few priorities in the areas in which we maintain the data, for instance, and the way in which we survey the condition of our assets. But it will be helpful to get further input and advice and research on other municipal best practices on how best to implement for the town of Newmarket. And this could involve such things as which particular system to acquire, the resources necessary to maintain an adequately robust asset management system and framework. And I think the comment there about just staffing resources reflects an unknown quantity at this point, but there may be implications that once a structure is set as to how we move forward with asset management, that decisions will have to be brought before council with respect to resourcing it.
Do we have any sense at this point what the anticipated resourcing may be?
I don't at this point, Regional Councillor. I think to this date we have set up the committee, which has representation from a number of departments, for asset management to be to have some ongoing legacy with the town. I think it will be important to have some structure in place as to where it lands. And so, as important as resourcing might also be where within the organization it best fits, whether it's in a particular department or commission or corporately.
Okay, thank you.
That would all be part of the business case proposal as we go forward, and part of our budget considerations as we go forward as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Cost-benefit factors would be a consideration as well. And the seconder, would you like to speak to that? Councillor Kerwin?
And that covered the question I was going to ask.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Very thorough document and a great framework to go forward with, and we'll have to see as to what that requires when we have a better understanding of the process. My own questions were, are there timelines with respect to the asset management strategy and the customer service levels? Those are the next steps, I believe. Any thoughts about what that timeline might be? Mr. Noheimer?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, we do anticipate preparing an RFP for a consultant assignment in Q2, and we hope that we are able to tender that and have some feedback before the end of this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions or discussions? I have the recommendations. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We do have, I'd like to get to the consent items, but we do have one deputation. So maybe before we take a break, let's have that deputation. And is Mr. Telford here? Okay, Mr. Telford, if you could come forward. We permit up to 5 minutes. Sorry? Oh, Mr. Tedford, my apologies. I am getting my glasses fixed. Mr. Tedford, thank you, Andrew.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir. Yep.
Hello, my name's Andrew Tedford. I'm owner-operator of WikiLeaks Info. I would like to speak with Mr. Mayor and Council about the Newmarket food truck pilot project that we were part of in 2013. I just wanted to do a quick little overview, a quick little history of WikiLeaks Info, Food Truck Eats and Sweets, the Street Vendors in Canada Market Research Report from 2015, highlight a local event, Town of Newmarket Community Report from 2012 and 2013, the Newmarket Food Truck Pilot Project that we were part of in 2013, locations, recommendations, and some closing comments. WikiLeaks Info, the quick background, we took shape in December of 2011 was when we started the groundwork for that. We're not a franchise. We're not a partnership. On average, I staff 4 to 6 local employees for our season. And it's a small business that I started here in Newmarket. And we were the only truck that took part of the pilot project in 2013. The IBIS World Street Vendors in Canada Market Research. There's a few things here, but one thing, the industry has outperformed all food service sectors in the past 5 years, specifically talking about food trucks. Continue to do so during the next 5 years, and product innovation has also been a feature of the industry. There's 3 things I actually specifically like about this slide is the employment numbers, is we're part of that. Businesses, I'm a part of that number, and then there's that little shaded box that says there are no companies with a dominant market share in the industry. For me as an entrepreneur, like that's fantastic. It's a true sort of attempt at being a small business and taking a kick at this. Some local events. This was Gourmet Eats and Streets. This was an event that happened in Stouffville last year, June 18th on a Thursday night from 4:30 to about 9:30. They were expecting 2,000 people. They had 10,000 people show up downtown Stouffville. The following one they did that, I think it was somewhere between 12 and 15,000 people that showed up. So it's taking off. Last year we saw a huge increase in a lot of the towns up in the 905 looking for food trucks for different events, and it's an interesting bit. York Region, if you want, there's a link there. You can check out the information on that. The community report from the town of Newmarket 2012-2013 highlights the Newmarket Takes Gourmet Eats to the Streets. That's a little bit small. I've got a larger one. So it states, Newmarket Takes Gourmet Eats to the Streets. Recognizing a growing trend throughout Ontario, Newmarket recently launched a specialized food truck pilot project for the summer of 2013. The town issued a limited number of permits for food truck vendors to operate at various town lands and facilities from Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Appearance of the vehicle, menu, price, quality, freshness of food were among the criteria considered by the town. This was a 1-year pilot project aimed at providing additional fast and flavorful lunchtime options to the streets of Newmarket. And this was one of our locations. We were located in Ray Twining, out in this area here. Another location was Hollingsworth Arena, Fairy Lake, and River Commons. So those were the 4 rotating locations. So a recommendation, a new food truck pilot project for 2016. Rotating locations, and this is based from our experience. Based on our previous experience, the only location out of the 4 Newmarket pilot locations that provided the public with positive social experience was Riverwalk. This location provided us with a good visibility within the community. There was ample parking available for those that may travel by vehicle to take advantage of the newly renovated downtown community. We would like the opportunity to park exclusively at this location at 2015 season, determine what the town requires for us to plug in and pay for power if that was a requirement. Again, this was last year's email. So recommendations is a Riverwalk Commons pilot project for 2016. Deployment of a 2016 Riverwalk Commons food truck pilot project, utilizing Newmarket's local food trucks. When we originally wrote this letter, there was just us. Since last year, there's been 2 other food trucks that have come online in Newmarket. There is a demand for social engagement choices. We see a lot with last year's success of the on-street patio project, which was fantastic. Great feedback from that.
Now, I have you at 5 minutes. So
5 minutes.
I'll ask for a motion to extend. So moved, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Big.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. An additional 5 minutes if necessary.
Thank you. the recommendations, town distributes surveys to patrons participating in the food truck for the duration of the possible project or pilot project. And I would also encourage that you monitor the social networks as well to see the feed that happens within the network. If you do Food Truck Frenzy, Stouffville, and any of the search engines, like especially Twitter, for an example, whole bunch of comments from the Stouffville event. And finally, at the end of the project, a review of the survey data the town gathered from the 2013 Newmarket Pilot Project program, and compare that with what information comes out now. This is now going into our 4th season, and a lot has changed in those times. And in closing, choice for public. Overall, in the long term, we would like to see a greater freedom of the growing generation of food entrepreneurs to operate in Newmarket, as it's already being done in cities like London, Hamilton, Waterloo, and numerous others. As local residents and business owners, we encourage Newmarket to use this pilot project as a progressively move towards, as other communities have, create vending bylaws that are on trend with public desires to socialize and help shape this evolving food culture. Food tourism is a rapid emerging market, and showcasing the diversity that we have in this community will definitely help people of all the businesses in Newmarket and York region. That is all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Are there
Mayor.
any questions
Council.
of clarification? Councillor Kerwin?
Thank you, Andrew. This is not new. I've known you for quite some time, about 2 years now.
Yes.
And I did visit one of your trucks, or several of them actually. The one you had located temporarily at Tenetronics, which was Habitat for Humanity.
Yes.
I think you were there that day, and I will speak later, but I did mention that you go to Anita Moore, and you've done that, and I thank you for just a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
And just a comment, there is an evolution and a revolution out there in everything. Accommodation, for instance, Airbnb, couch surfing, Uber, the taxi industry. We're changing, and you're absolutely right. Social media gets instant reaction. So I'm interested to see what happens here. Just like when King Cool Duck opened up, and I went down to their opening, they're moving in another direction now too, totally different than what we knew before. And this is quite fascinating. And I compliment you, and nice to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Vey?
Andrew, thank you very much for your presentation. Congratulations on your success. And as we all know, food trucks, they really are a growing trend. They allow entrepreneurs like yourself to get into the food business on relatively lower costs as opposed to renting, et cetera, and it gives greater variety out there for the public. So we know it's trending, and congratulations. Just a couple of questions for you, really, just in your opinion as an entrepreneur out there doing this, and it's really 2 questions. The first one is, and it's starting to happen in some places in Toronto, I believe, what do you think of the idea of clusters of food trucks, almost like a food court at the mall, but areas where there would be clusters? Just your opinion on that.
My opinion on the clusters is it's a fantastic idea. The idea of the food truck culture is not a single truck in a location. It becomes a social event. So you may come down and say, I want to try something from this truck. Oh, have you tried this? A lot of the events that we've gone to, we've gone from Ottawa to Niagara Falls for events. And we'll get a lot of people sort of coming together and buying some from different trucks, and then the sharing of that, which is fantastic. That definitely is something that you'd want to look at. One thing that has happened in Toronto as of recently is some of the food truck owners have gotten together to basically lease a piece of private property. Well, they'll create like a food truck alley or whatever you want to call it, food pod or something along that line. But yeah, that's definitely the thing that you want to look at. If I will shoot this email out. There's a link that I can send everybody here with some additional information. So there's some reports that were done out of Portland on the food trucks. There is some documentation in here, I believe, as well, that has some information like you mentioned on the food truck clusters or pods.
Okay. Yeah, so please send it out to staff and to council members. And going along with that, I just want to speak to you and get your opinion on locations. We had 4 locations, and I believe from your presentation, forgive me if I didn't understand it, you certainly felt Riverwalk Commons was the prime location. I'm not sure what you thought of the other locations we had, or if you have recommendations for other locations, both for individual trucks and for clusters. I think you've probably given this some thought.
The locations-wise, 2014, Toronto did a similar project where they had food trucks in the parks, and it failed miserably. That's not the essence of that social community of the food trucks. Riverwalk was specific. Why we're looking at that and had good results was because it's part of that social network. You've got the people coming and going. You've got the flow of traffic. You've got it's a better representation to the Newmarket. Pop back up here. To the report here of bringing the food truck gourmet eats to the streets. It was a better representation of that because it was actually near the streets, where the other locations it was parking lots basically. And Ray 20, for example, was residential area. I probably gave more tours to some of the kids that were doing like their summer park stuff there of the food truck than actual people visiting there as well.
Oh, okay, so just in terms of, I'm assuming you will make recommendations on sites to the town.
I'm sorry?
You are going to be sending some material to town staff,
absolutely. Yeah.
On this. That would include, site recommendations, just from your perspective of being able to sell the product and the places where people are interested in buying the product.
Yes, this email, if I understand correctly. This closing document, this paragraph here, this was pulled off the email that we sent last March, which I believe I just emailed everybody on council a copy of that. So there is recommendations in there on specifically that the Riverwalk Commons area. There's some other recommendations in there for bylaw updates. The bylaw updates are need to be relooked at and addressed as well. So there is some information in that document.
Okay, well, again, thank you for your recommendation. Best luck to you, and I hope we're able to take advantage of that growing trend.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kerwin?
Yes, just in some, of course, Andrew, you are a local resident.
Yes, I am.
Roxborough, that's correct.
Believe.
And special events such as the Mayor's Levy to keep business within the town of Newmarket, which is one thing that I always consider. You could cater to something special like the Mayor's Levy so that it's a local Newmarket resident. We don't go outside.
Could I? Sorry?
Your truck?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying, just for an example.
Yes.
Great. You've answered my question.
Yeah, I think there's some recommendations and sites. I appreciate you coming forward and bringing this to our attention. It might be appropriate to refer this to Recreation and Culture and have a further dialogue with the director. And I would entertain a motion with that in that respect. Well, yeah. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, Councillor, is that we've got a lot of things on our plate right now, and to commit a timeline that we might not realistically be able to respond to, we'll ask our CAO in terms of what might be a realistic timeline, but there's a lot of priorities that we've got before this council, and the fact that we've seen a couple of items on this agenda. So it would be, I'd like to have staff's opinion or the commissioner's opinion in terms of what the timelines might be, but this might be appropriate to receive and refer to staff. But before I do, I see a regional councillor has some questions as well. You're in the queue?
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, regional councillor.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick one. Did you say you're seasonal?
It's seasonal. We ran last winter through it, but we are, technically we are functional throughout the winter.
Are you aware of any, I'm just thinking about, what about an approach that targets events, and the town puts on or helps to put on so many events that have larger numbers of people, and instead of sitting in the Ray 20 Center for 5 days with almost nobody coming through, knowing when events are and being licensed for those events. I'm thinking particularly right now, we're scaling back some of our offerings at the Magna Center, and there might be some synergies there too in order to partner with, and I think there's a whole series of them that either we're putting on ourselves or that others are putting on in our spaces that we could possibly think more strategically about providing that kind of service that people would want when when there's enough people there to warrant it, and would probably be a really welcome service, added addition. So I just ask that maybe yourself and staff have that conversation as well, because I think there might also be helpful at.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks.
I think it's a good idea. Go forward.
Just in some respect, why I say a timeline, I know I met with this gentleman and his wife about a year and a half ago, and they need some timeline. I mean, they're small entrepreneurs. If they don't get the timelines, they're not in business. And that's why I would like the CEO to see that. Sure, we have priorities, but I think, we deserve our residents a business in a timely manner.
So, and I agree with the timelines. Let's see what a reasonable timeline is. Mr. Nohammer? Or no, sorry. Mr. McDougall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly in terms of timeline, I appreciate, of course, the timeliness of the season, and we'd like to move as quick as we can on it. The prospect of it being a pilot approach certainly allows us to be more nimble and timely in our response. I understand that there's a more comprehensive review of a number of bylaws, of which this is one of, ongoing, so that would take more time. So because it could be considered as a pilot, we would certainly endeavor to report back to council with some options to consider, certainly before the summer season. So let's say within the next 60 to 90 days, we should be able to be back.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to that respect then. Yep. For staff, further report. Okay. Seconder? Regional Councillor. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you very much.
Let's deal with the consent items. We have consent items 4 to 16. Item number 10, I believe, because it seeks direction, should not be included as it should be an action item. So are there any items between items 4 and 9 and 11 and 16? And item number 8 is a declaration on. Any items to be dealt with separately?
So 10 will be dealt with separately?
10, yes, it's an action item. Yes, 10 will be dealt with separately. Item number 6, item number 9. Okay. Any other items? So then before we, could I have a motion then to adopt items number 7, 11 through to 17? No, 11 through to 16. Item number 16 is amended. Have a motion in that respect on it as a consent item? Councillor Broom-Plumley and Councillor Bazans. All those in favor? That is carried. Any opposed? All right. So we will deal with item number 7, item number 6, 8, 9, and 10 after we have a break. So maybe it's 3:15 now, 3:30 we could reconvene. 3:30. Thank you. Yeah. I like the idea of parking at the functions where there's lots of activity.
Well, that's why it'll be more successful, and then we won't.
Yeah, and we should be looking at, I think we got criticized by public affairs. So we've got up here. But I think it should be activity-based.
Especially help us out. Those lot companies have been there recently.
We do.
Okay, so then that takes in, okay. You see, there's, I just want to look at this one here, budget impacts. That will be quite a further year by council.
Okay.
Budget impacts related to. See, I don't want them involved in this. It's an old report. So really what we're dealing with is this one here. Okay? Well, there is. And no roosters. You might get little chicks in that age. I'm gonna ask you for a comment, okay? Just to give you a heads up. Yeah, sure.
Well, you have been, but you know what?
If he wants to. If he doesn't want to, that's
No,
fine
he does.
too.
He does. In fact, I recommended it. But he might be-
He has time, that's fine. Right. I had the opportunity to sit down with Rick Nethery at 1 o'clock and spent a half an hour with him, and he showed me what was being proposed or potentially could be proposed, and the notes he took of the comments from the members of council and staff.
Okay, bringing the committee meeting back to order. We've dealt with all items up until item number 6. Item number 6 is the development coordination proposal. Councillor Kerwin, would you like to speak to that, please? Oh, sorry, could we have a motion first? And then
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then we'll go into
I move to
discussion.
get it on the floor.
Okay, and the seconder? Do we have?
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Hempel is the seconder. Councillor Kerwin is the mover.
Yeah, I just have a question that, and I don't know who to ask this to. It could be through you to our director, Anita Moore. We are, the town continue with the best practice model of the Development Coordination Committee with outsourced development coordinator. And Howard Friedman would be the agent. But the question I have, and I had it, and the regional council had it too, a few years ago, is, I mean, he's dealing with projects in part of the town. Does he not have a conflict with dealing with other developers when he's the town's coordinator to work with other developers? It's just a question I have. You know, here he's our coordinator, but he could be dealing with other developers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a technicality. That's why I asked the legal department.
I wonder if Mr. Nethery could address that.
Our director of planning.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, and if you want to get some legal advice, I'm happy to turn the floor over as well. What has happened up to this point is that the nature of his applications, and you'll be aware that he doesn't frequently deal with applications in Newmarket, but those that he does are typically not subdivision work, and this work is related to subdivisions. So say a site-specific application for a zoning or a site plan somewhere is not one that would be dealt with at the Development Coordinating Committee. That said, if there is anything that looks like it's getting close to that, say, for example, a prior client, he will declare and ask one of the staff members to chair that portion of the meeting, and he'll leave.
Again, how about infill throughout the town?
Mr. Nethery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current assignment for the development coordinator is only relating to subdivisions. So if there was a subdivision that was an infill one, he could be tasked with that. And I guess the one on Eagle Street was an example of that. But you know, the typical development that's just a severance or a site plan, he wouldn't be involved in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Hempel?
No comments.
Okay. Regional Councillor?
Thanks very much. Probably through to Mr. Nethery again, but I guess what I'm wondering is there's no question that Howard Friedman's an extremely reputable person and has been doing great work for the town. And I want to be clear, that's not the issue. But part of it is that we had a report like similar to this probably 5 years ago. And part of the thinking in each one is that, well, we're doing less and less sort of greenfield developments that this applies to. But, we probably have another one coming on in the southwest quadrant of Newmarket. My understanding, that could be a 10-year phasing, et cetera. And part of the issue when we do tender-related things is, are you providing general opportunity? Does everybody feel like they could participate? And I guess what I don't see is what I would imagine is whether it's a 1-year extension or 5 years from now, I can't imagine. There's nothing I see here that I would imagine seeing change. So, is that, or am I missing? Like, would it be fair to say that there's very likelihood that we'll get a report in 5 years that says something similar? Because this was 5 years ago, and I'm not being facetious. I truly, or is other things changed that I'm missing? Because it seems to have the same rationale, and my understanding is we'll have some greenfield developments going on beyond 5 years.
Mr. Nethery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and just to clarify, what's being proposed is 3 years with a couple of extensions. I know I won't be here in 5 years, so you probably won't be having that conversation with me in any event. So we have had a lot of satisfaction with that particular individual and that firm. So I wouldn't want to prejudice an outcome, but the points that we have made in this report speak to not only just the knowledge, but also the cost associated with a transference to a different team. And if you can recall way back when we switched from Delcan to Burnside, I think that transfer took 3 years, and it ended up costing an awful lot as the transfer occurred. So those are our prime motivators. We are very satisfied with the work, but I mean, if council would prefer to go out, we're more than prepared to do that, and I'm sure this applicant would as well. But I think we were making this recommendation to you, Mr. Mayor, on the basis of an efficiency, and we wouldn't be making that if we weren't satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I guess my question was, though, I know you won't be in the conversation, but everything I read, the rationale, I can't see that changing much in 5 years. So are we conceivably looking at, from staff's perspective, that this would be something that would, or is that just too far ahead to plan?
Might be, but I guess I would also point out that even though we said we were running out of land, we really are now, and so I'm frankly not sure of how much demand there would be for the subdivision kind of work. That said, I mean, it might be something that council would want to think about in terms of, say, site plan work in the future.
Okay. The one thing I would say is that we're also, maybe one thing we could do is just, and maybe, I don't know if it would have been that way anyway, maybe it would have been, I don't know, but that we could just, those 2 1-year renewals could come back to council as a 1 2 year or 2 1, but that it comes back. So it's really a 3-year contract, and then we can have this conversation again in roughly 3 years and sort of look at the lay of the land and judge whether that can at that point maybe come in house if the load is decreasing as much as we think, or if there is a point to going out to. I'm really just, to be honest, I'm just sensitive a little bit to, and we deal with this region too, and there's often extremely good rationale, and then there's an extremely good rationale, but the idea that part of what the municipality does is we're to a degree an economic engine, and it provides opportunity to people, and to ensure that on occasion that opportunity is opened up widely is important, I think. And so I'm comfortable with this, but if the intention was to come back regardless for the 1 year, then it's fine the way it is. But if not, maybe we can just change. If the mover and the second are okay with it, just change it so that comes back to council.
So you're suggesting an amendment that 3 years plus 2 1-year renewal options subject to council approval?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm good, sir.
Okay. Mr. Sheldon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to just note that this has been set out such that it's consistent with the town's engineering check and consultant, so it would be appropriate to do that. At the same time, there is an exercise going on, as you know, as part of the corridor marketing and development to look at the site plan process. So there may be a point where subdivisions are so few and far between that are coming forward, the remaining few, that there may be a flip in that service. So I think it's appropriate to come back with a report to give you a status on that time.
Thank you. Councillor Bazans?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions that I had through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Nethery with respect to you make reference to HBR's problem-solving approach, which has earned respect. Can you provide any examples of things that they would have troubleshooted on our behalf that perhaps were exemplary or?
Mr. Nethery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we need to have you attend one of our meetings so you can see him in action. I'm at a bit of a loss as to a particular one. However, I guess it's, I can describe it perhaps this way to you, and that is from time to time, and certainly not always, there are viewpoints coming from the development industry to the municipality which are at odds. And the development coordinator in this particular instance is very skilled at looking for a way to find consensus and look for solutions and come up with innovative recommendations as to how that might be done. For example, you know, maybe some suggestions around phasing, or maybe some suggestions around some particular language that could be included in a subdivision agreement that would address the concerns that the municipality has while still recognizing the demands being put on the developers. So it's a kind of a skill that that is very key. And in particular, you also, from time to time, and again, not very often, you might see conflicting interests within the municipal requirements. So engineering might have something that's a bit at odds to public works or to planning or to recreation. And it's the development coordinator's role to ensure that those things get worked out and ironed out before comments are forwarded to the developer. For efficiency, but also to ensure that we're not working at cross purposes as we're dealing with them. I could probably give you a lot better examples if I had a little bit more time to think about it, but certainly we've been very pleased with his performance.
So would that include also looking at input that's been received through the public information centers or other public dialogue where there may have been some recommendations through not just the municipality but the public to have consideration regarding phasing, interface, and so forth? Would that be part of this coordinator's role to do that?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that certainly could. I think it's you're going to recognize he's not part of that public PIC milieu that we are used to at either information sessions or public meetings. But the takeaways from that, where the municipality, for example, has made a commitment for a phasing or something like that, is then administered by his efforts.
Okay. And another question I had with respect to option 3, which you've determined is not necessarily a desirable one, which would require hiring of additional staff. And I note that the fee or the amounts paid to this consultant was roughly about $21,000 a year. So you're suggesting that to hire additional staff would cost more than that? Or, like, I can understand why perhaps not adding to existing workload of staff wouldn't be feasible, but hiring somebody specifically to do this on behalf of the town would cost more than $21,000, or like, is there some economies then of having this outsourced?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess two things. First of all, he is there only as needed. So when there are no applications, if we were ever in that position, then we don't use his services. Similarly, the work that he performs, he's paid by the municipality, but we receive that money from the individual applicants who are proceeding with that. So it's, other than the administration of it, it's revenue neutral. So if we were to be looking for, say, an internal person, for example, then we would have to determine, is there somebody with some free time, which I think we know what the answer to that is. So it would mean that we would have to come up with someone with a new assignment. One of the concerns is, and frankly, the method through which the development coordinator works is that that person is put in a a hierarchical role relative to the directors who are around the table. So in other words, we, through the terms of reference of that work, report to him practically. So that person has to be someone who can, frankly, rattle our cage if we haven't responded in a timely way. So in other words, you would have to appreciate that that would be someone at a fairly senior level, as opposed to someone who might be early on in their career, giving direction to the municipal solicitor or someone else.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have had conversations with representatives of BUILD, York Region Area BUILD, and the process that we use, the Development Coordination Committee, gets high response, high accolades from the industry, and in fact, they've recommended that with all the building going on in East Gwillimbury, that they consider an approach similar to that. So it's from the industry itself. They feel that the process is very effective, and so it's good to see that was a new concept that Newmarket introduced, and has been very successful and is recognized as such within the industry. And the good news is we get to recover those costs. So, any further questions? So just to clarify, I was quick to add that subject to council approvals, so for item number 2, just to be clear, the 2-year, the 2 one-year renewal options are subject to council approval. We're approving the 3-year contract. No further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Next item then is item number 8, and that's the planning report with respect to 260 Eagle Street. We have the recommendations. Can I have a motion with respect to the Councillor Kerwin, seconded by Councillor Sponga. Okay, speaking to the proposal, Councillor Kerwin, as the mover.
The town of Newmarket formerly owned this piece of property, and we sold that to this individual, and eventually we knew there would be development on that property. So he's going through the due process, and I see that within that, under servicing allocation, has not been granted for this proposal. As this development proposal does not have servicing allocation, the holding age provisions of the Planning Act will be required in the event the property is to be rezoned. So I have no hesitation in moving it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sponga.
I appreciate the fact that, first of all, I appreciate the comments from our planning staff, and again, in front of us, we see what is potentially what is an amendment to the official plan, and what is going to be potentially a very lengthy discussion if the product was to move forward the way it's presented. I've had the opportunity to meet with the proponent and a number of residents in the past, and we actually met a couple of times, and really the response and the feedback that came back from the residents is that they would not be at this point supporting the massing and elevations that are being proposed. Having said that, I think that it's prudent for us to ensure that we move forward with what the process is under the Planning Act, and also give an opportunity to the residents to come out and comment on this process. So although at this point I would not be able to support the application as it is in front of us, given the massing, given the height, the elevations, and the impact that would have to the adjacent neighborhoods and the adjacent single-family residents on Andrew Street, I will though support moving to a public meeting where we can have a more holistic discussion and give an opportunity to the public to comment directly.
Thank you. Any further comments? All part of due process. Permit the community to provide their input. And okay, no further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 9, egg-laying hens.
I move to give it up the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, Councilor. I wonder if you might consider just a minor amendment, and I think it was addressed. Mr. CAO, did we address the the waiver being recommended, so that the waiver during the pilot, for the duration of the pilot project, would apply only to the pilot sites? Do we?
The director just to comment on that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Through you, to Mr. Mayor, yes, we would make the appropriate amendments to the animal control bylaw, however that looks, to give effect to the pilot project.
Okay, only to the, okay, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Kerwin?
No.
So there's no need to
Is the, just, would the clerk like to make any comment about how restrictive this proposal is? And by the way, I would also like to thank Leslie Long and Florence DePassio for their input in this. We have had public meetings. There's a lot of work put into it.
To you, Mr. Mayor, just an outline of the regulations is provided on page 172 in the report. So just in quick summary, this is a one-year pilot project for Ward 2. It is involving or proposing to involve 5 residential properties with a maximum of 3 hens per lot. And there are a number of setback requirements. One of the other important pieces is prior to approval, the applicant must seek permission from all abutting neighbors to mitigate any concerns. And then, as I mentioned, there are setback requirements and there's keeping of hen requirements as well.
Okay. And the seconder? Councillor Bay?
This is in Ward 2?
It is.
I'm all for it.
Councillor Twinney?
We got some correspondence with regards to the age of the hens. That's right, but 4 months. Is that part of this? And through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe can I get some information about that? I think Joan made some good comments about allowing, you know, it's having young chicks is also a great education for families with children to have to raise them from a young age. So I'm just wondering why it is that we aren't allowing them till 4 months.
Mr. Brower?
Yes, well, 4 months is the minimum age for chickens to be able to lay eggs. So that's part of it, because this is an egg-laying hen, primarily egg-laying hen driven project. There may be other keeping requirements with respect to chicks, which we haven't addressed in this report. If we were going to include that, we would need to do some more research around that. So it isn't a consideration that was in place in the other municipalities that had a pilot project as well, or had a permanent provision for this.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Sponga?
Question. I'm not sure if this falls under the animal control bylaw, but if it does, then I need some clarification. How would the euthanasia of the hens work, if necessary?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is addressed in the regulations. The home slaughter of the hens is prohibited, and any diseased hens are disposed at through a diseased or deceased hens would be disposed at a livestock facility or through a veterinarian.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'll call a question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Now, according to my list, the only items left are item 10 and 16. Did we deal with item number 16? Who asked to have item number 16, or was that for the correction?
That was a correction.
That was a correction? Okay, so that's been dealt with. All right, so before we go forward with item number 10, which is the joint report on the Hollingsworth Arena, might be appropriate for us to have an in-camera meeting to discuss the negotiations. It meets the requirements of the Municipal Act, so I will entertain a motion then to go in. It is on the agenda as well, yeah. So I'll entertain a motion then to go into a closed session to review joint report number 2016-7, and that is relative to the acquisition or the disposition of land and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege and relative to the Hollingsworth Arena. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Councillor Vague. Councillor Bezance. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. We're not streaming yet, okay? We have been experiencing some technical difficulties.
Honestly, I think it's just.
We don't have the broadband with that. Okay, but we'll fix that. Okay, so we're back into public session. The only item that is remaining is item number 10, and that is the report number 2016-8 Hollingsworth Arena. The regional councillor.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we receive this report. I think that, to put it bluntly, we've got a lot of ongoing decisions that this interacts with, and we've got a workshop coming up to look at some issues, and I think we need to get that workshop behind us so that we understand the full playing field before making this decision on its own. So I would recommend that we just receive this for now, and I think the workshop scheduled for late in February, and we can sort of get a broader context and then make this decision in light of that information.
Okay. So just receive or receive and refer? Just receive?
I think receive is fine.
Receive, okay. Is there a second to receive this report? Councillor Twinney, okay. Any further discussion? I think the point's been made. More fulsome discussions should be had before we go forward with this. All right, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay. We've dealt with our action items. Reports from regional representatives.
Just the council.
Thank you. Notices of motion. Councillor Bezance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a notice to bring a motion forward to the next council meeting that the town council support Private Members Bill 42, the Municipal Amendment Act, election of the Chair of York Region 2014, and that council support and endorse that the Chair of York Region be elected at large by the residents of York Region.
Okay, thank you. And that will be circulated with the agenda. All right, thank you. Councillor Hempin?
Thank you. I will be bringing forward a motion in the next council meeting, and that will be in regards to staff exploring the potential for an entrance sign at the corner of Longford and Davis, or somewhere inside of the community, and that a sign be erected, and the funding for that signing come from the private sector, that will identify the area as Newmarket Heights. So I'm looking for staff to find a potential to provide some land in the center or somewhere appropriate, identifying the area.
Any other notices of motion? Being none, then I don't believe we have any motions. New business. Councillor Sponga, Councillor Kerwin.
Two quick items, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm just in the event that one of our residents, Mr. Andrew McPhail, is watching the stream. I had notified members of the committee that I was bringing forth a motion to look at regulating outdoor home occupancy in relating to some logging and sale of firewood in residential homes. I am pleased to say that staff is going to take a second look at that issue, so there's no need to raise that item at this committee of the whole, Mr. Mayor. And the other item of new business, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to our staff, I'm not sure who could help me on this one, but I just wonder if I could get some clarification on whether council will be invited, or whether the resolution from the town of Aurora in terms to the OMB amendments and specifically to their golf course, I guess, resolution, and calling of, I believe it's called a Congress. I'm not sure what they called it.
A summit?
A summit, yeah. I wonder if how and when that information will, if that resolution is going to be circulated as part of our agenda, or whether it needs members of council to raise it.
I don't recall as to whether or not Aurora said they were going to circulate that, but that would make sense.
They've asked to have it
So
circulated.
that would come forward to us. Mr. Brower, how would that, what would the
Sure,
process
I
be?
can certainly make that available. I can inquire with their clerk's office.
Okay, and then in terms of the process, whether, will it be left to the individual members of council to decide to attend the summit or not, or whether do we need to have a formal response from the council?
I can find out further details.
Let's determine that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerwin?
Yes, just some information, some really nice information. The corner of Leslie and Mulock, the old Repos property and the one to the east of it, Falcon Crest has an opening this Saturday, February the 6th at 11 a.m., and all members of council are invited. And it's all gone through council and so forth quite smoothly. I'm having a meeting with the residents on Friday night, a condo board meeting. But please join us at 11 a.m. On Mulock and Leslie for the opening of 60 townhomes by Falcon Crest. Thank you.
Thank you. Saturday at 11? Yeah, maybe circulate, or did they? Okay, good. Thank you. Councillor Twinney.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if this is appropriate under new business or how much work would be involved in it. Maybe staff can give me a little bit of advice. When we had our NEDAC workshop, it's something that I thought of and brought up, and I've been thinking about it for some time, is we did a change in our I guess our zoning for the employment lands in Harry Walker, I guess, 3 years ago, when we did it. And we did some changes that I know made, I've had some contact with some businesses that, we're trying to go in there. They're more of a retail side, but they don't fit under the zoning, so they'd have to do a zoning bylaw amendment. And I'm just wondering, do we have any information of how many roadblocks perhaps some of the businesses have come up to with regards to, I guess, not being able to implement maybe their business because of the zoning bylaw that we have in place, and just to get a little bit of information. And I don't think it's I know we have a lot on our plate, but I just we did that change of zoning to ensure that there was more I guess factory-based manufacturing going on in certain areas, and I haven't seen it, so I'm just wondering, where are things at with it? So at some point, will we get an update on how the implementation of changing the zoning bylaw has worked, or has it been successful? And I just, because I've had some conversations with some businesses that have come up with roadblocks with, red tape, having to change, zoning bylaws, or not being able to implement a business that they want to, or the cost becomes prohibitive, are we doing ourselves a detriment? So I guess more of an information on this. I just like to get some feedback from staff at some point on how it's worked, and it's I think it's been 2-3 years, I think, when we did it, and it'd be nice to get some sort of update.
An update, and that's with respect to the employment land constraints in that area.
Yeah, because we did some changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If that's something that the committee would like us to do, we can do a refresher for you, and it does relate to the region's requirements as well in terms of conversion of employment lands. But I'd also like to, either through Peter or the Director of Planning, have them talk specifically with you, because we've also encountered the odd individual issue related to parking that is also an item, and there's a plan for a zoning change in that regard. So Rick could cover that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nohammer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just in response, I was just going to add something similar to what the CAO mentioned. I can certainly talk to staff in terms of what level of engagement they've had with any owners or proponents that have been looking to introduce some different land uses that may not be fully compliant with the zoning that was meant to attract employment. Maybe perhaps more of a commercial or retail use is what I'm gathering you're interested in. But we certainly can
speak with you further on that, and again, canvass staff for what information they have and provide you with that information.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see, we did those changes, and it was to, obviously attract the certain businesses that we want to the area, and has it been successful? Have we,
Right.
But
Okay.
I'll set up a time to talk about it as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other matters of new business? Being none, then motion to adjourn. Councillor Kerwin, Councillor Twinney, recorded vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. A lot of good discussion went on today, and I appreciate the approach and the dialogue.